your on your tippy toes, creeping around like no one knows. Think you're so criminal. Bruises on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you, oh please. I do what I want when I'm wanting to. Not so cynical. I'm a bad guy. Duh. I'm the bad guy. So you're a tough guy, like it really rough guy. Just can't get enough guy, just always so buff guy. I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend that type, might seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy. Duh. Duh. Bruises on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you, oh please. I do what I want when I'm wanting to. Not so cynical. So you're a tough guy, like it really rough guy. Just can't get enough guy, just always so buff guy. I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend that type, might seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy. Duh. I'm only good at being bad. I'm only good at being bad.
Good morning, everyone. Me
Hello,
and
people of Earth.
Yes, hopefully, maybe of Earth. It depends. Me and Joseph. Well, we did a debate before, and I totally wiped the floor. That's a good way to put it. When he thought that Superman was a punk. So I like the idea of these Thunderdomes. I think it's kind of a cool concept, and I might incorporate them more. So you know what? You are just going to officially be my guinea pig. I
Fine
think
by
it's
me.
a cool concept. I do. And honestly, like, this one's a little bit more political. So I don't mind that. I know people don't like sometimes when I talk politics, so I'm just putting the warning out there.
I don't
Like,
have to listen.
yeah, exactly. And it's not overtly political, but Tristan's afraid to debate me. Elon, bring it on. Bring it on. Okay. But we're
Wait,
gonna
what
be
did he say?
talking. I'm afraid to debate him. I shared so one thing I've really noticed, and the reason I want to go behind why I even shared that video on my community post is I don't know if it's just me, but I have noticed that a lot of teachers are being demonized lately. Have you noticed the same thing, or am I crazy?
Yeah, I have noticed the same thing, but it's not unwarranted, and that's what my comments to the video were really about. In my experience, I was starting with my experience going to school in California, because I had seen a lot of teachers that were taking it out on the students because they are minimum wage babysitters. They think that's our fault. We're not even, some of us can't even ride a bike yet, and we're getting chewed out because this idiot went to school saying, again, just so they can become a minimum wage babysitter. This is at a time in California where you could just get up and go to a different job if you didn't like it. That's not like today at all. So I see things like people saying California schools are underfunded, and so they need more funding so the kids get better education.
sure.
You can't put more money into that problem.
Yes, you can.
At,
Yes, you
at
can.
my warehouse, go ahead.
No, you absolutely can. If a teacher's getting paid a decent living wage, all people, everyone across the board, very commie of me, should get paid a living wage. And teachers are like, I have mad respect for teachers because they are, in a sense, bringing up the next generation. They should be paid, and throwing money at a problem will absolutely help. You can get better wages, you can get better books, you can get better tech, you can get a lot of things. A lot of things
That is
funding
something
your.
an evil commie would say.
I know, right?
At my warehouse, I've been here 5 years. In my warehouse, we were getting paid $13.50 to start, and now most of us are making 27 an hour. We have the same half-ass people as always. And throughout, throughout that time when we were getting paid $13.50, people say I don't get paid enough for this job. They kept it anyway. But they always said they didn't get paid enough for this job. Then pay went up to 17, then 18, then 21, and it was the same story over and over. We don't get paid enough for this job. You can't pay people. You really cannot pay people to do more than they're really willing to do.
That
What's
and
going on
that's
with
fair.
schools? But it is true that you cannot pay them to be more willing than they really are. You see all these things you talk about, like giving them better textbooks and such. Why does that matter if the teacher isn't even willing to read them? If the
Right,
teacher's
but
not
you
even
need a
willing to
better
tell us what they
screening
said.
process then. Then it's a failure at the foundation. Whoever is hiring these people should be sending them to McDonald's instead. They should be and honestly, like, what is I know to be a teacher, I actually don't know. What are what is it, a 4-year degree?
I believe so. Yeah, it does. It does vary. I believe it varies by state because these are decided by the state. But yeah, it could be something like 2 to 4 years.
Okay.
I know the people I know went to college for at least 4 years, some greater because they have other specialties in history that they wanted to emphasize in school.
Well,
So,
and I get that, but I do think it's a hiring process issue. Like, there was also a time when and I know to be a teacher's a substitute, it's much easier. But I do think if you have the right person in charge, like you have your hiring, whether it's I went to a school and I graduated with 60 people. So it was a lot different. There was a lot, like, the people that were hiring people there was like the principal. And it was just like there was like 4 people that actually worked in the office. So it was a
mhm.
very small school. But the hiring process is where the failure is. If you hire people, pay them a good wage, and have the correct people implemented, and of course, you're not always going to make the right decision. There's bad apples in every bunch, but money is a big issue. We should be teaching these people all of history, all of math. And I'm not talking like, I know there's this weird like woke math shit going around. I know you've talked about
Yes.
that before, um, of which I've never seen and only been shown one example. I'm talking teaching these kids the fundamentals of everything they need to know, and then adding upon it, you need to take civics. You need to take some sort of financial course when you're older in order to just learn basics like balancing a fucking checkbook. I sound old when I say that, but
Mhm.
I don't know if people actually balance checkbooks anymore. I
Nope,
don't. So yeah.
just you.
No, I don't even do it. I just look at the online thing. I'm like, okay, this is yeah, this is good. We're
People don't
good.
even write checks anymore. You're that old.
I haven't written a check in 10 years. Shut up. But I did think I was cool because I'm like, it's my first checkbook. I'm so
All right. Responding to what you said. First off, I understand I understand that there are great teachers out there. I did have some great teachers. I also had some really bad ones. That actually something that irritated me. I actually always wanted to be a teacher of some sort growing up. I just didn't really know what. Then thinking back to my experience in California schools, I wanted to be a teacher for teachers to make better teachers.
right.
That's
That's
when that's
awesome.
really what inspired me to be a better learner. I didn't want to teach the students. I wanted to teach the teachers so they could be better for the students. That was something I wanted to emphasize. But I live in California. I got to choose. Do I want my own apartment? Do I want to go to school? It really can't be both.
Right.
Unfortunately, it is too expensive.
Yes.
And about what you said. So you were talking about issues in mathematics. Yes, there are multiple, and California was going to adopt these policies. The only reason they stopped is because of public backlash. Now, if you are a good educator, the public backlash should be the least of things in your decisions. You're supposed to know this is not education. Education is supposed to be about necessary cause effect relationships in the given subject. So you're bringing in controversial subjects that don't, or controversial approaches rather, that don't even have necessary rules related to cause and effect. Of course, people are angry. Like one
Okay,
of them.
wait. Before we get to the controversial subjects, let's bring in the video that I wanted to show. Schools
Okay.
are too woke. Get away. Yeah. Okay. And then we'll talk on that.
Okay.
A very serious question for all these teachers. Do you do anything except think about gender identity and your own sexual?
Yes. We teach them to read, to open books like doors to different dimensions, and even now my 6th graders still ask me to read to them. We teach them math, how to add to others' learning, how to subtract self-doubt, how division is great for pizza, but not classrooms or countries. And we teach them about science, how inertia is an object's resistance to change, just as fear is a person's resistance to change. We teach them about history, all the right and wrong and real and relevant, and we teach them to grow gardens out of gravel, how to make miracles out of scratch. We walk on water so they can walk on galaxies, and even when one comes back and says that we may have saved her life and that we are good at what we do, we choose to believe them over you.
Very serious.
I'm such a girl. Even the second time I like, even watching that again, I get chills. There's something so great about a teacher. There has to be a severe amount of patience. Like, kids can be terrible. I remember being terrible, but I also remember the teachers that I could go to. I actually had a teacher, Miss Scott. I love her to this day. I could go to her if I was having a bad day, if my mom was mean or high. I could go to her and talk to her like a human being, right? So
Mhm.
I have a real respect for that idea that if things aren't so great at home, teachers are an amazing buffer.
Check your audio. I think you cut out for a split second.
Oh, did I? Hello,
But
hello, hello.
you're generally okay. You sound great. You cut. Maybe it's an anomaly. Never mind that. Well, let's start with this guy. So he said
Wait,
inertia.
one second.
Okay.
Robert sent a tip. Did you put it in the thing? Robert. I just see the thing. I'm trying to find it, Robert. This is one thing bad about not super, well, not just one thing, but bad about super chats. I don't actually see it. Can you put it in the comments and then I can highlight it, please? Okay,
You
go
have
ahead.
a bot that just throws it up there automatically?
The bot actually says you've got a tip, but it doesn't actually say what it is, and I didn't have it up yet. I gotta bring it up.
Okay.
But usually when Robert does it himself, he puts it in there, and I'm
He'll
a
remind
lazy
us.
ass. All right, I got it. I promise. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Robert, thank you so much. First of all, my mom is a teacher and tries her hardest. Sadly, a number of kids are brats or have pushy parents. Most need to be taken into account. Also, I think the number of bad seeds make kids LGBTQ/commies teachers are probably less than 10% at best. Oh, for sure. Oh, for fucking sure. And they get picked on. Nobody's trying to make your kids gay. Nobody's trying to do that kind of stuff. But they can be there. Like I said, my teacher was for me if they're not accepted at home. And I completely have respect for that. Okay, go ahead. You said let's start with this guy.
Well, let me start with Rob's comment. So whether or not it's less than 10% or less than 5% of controversial teachers, I like the idea of zero students in position to get screwed over. So
For sure.
so when you have teachers that are imposing a political ideology in math class, and this kid, well, then we get somebody who doesn't know how to balance a checkbook, even though they're not needed anymore. Well, let's follow steps backwards to square one. Let's
Being
ask
gay
ourselves what this
isn't
teacher was
political
doing.
ideology.
Say again.
Being gay isn't a political ideology.
No, but what does somebody's sexual preference have to do with math? What the
Nothing.
hell does that have to do with trigonometry?
Nothing.
This isn't something two guys do before bed. What the hell does this have to do with anything?
Wait, but you're making being queer sexual. It's not just two
Me?
guys
Wait, what?
before bed. It's just not two guys before bed. It's a romanticism. Did your teachers not ever
That's
talk?
me. No, that's me. That's me commenting. I don't know.
Oh, okay. No, did your
That's
teachers not
me
ever
commenting.
talk about their significant others?
That I don't think anybody did long division before trying for a baby. So I just don't understand why, if this stuff
You
is coming
never
out in
had
math.
a teacher, honestly, that was like, oh, what'd you guys do this weekend? Oh, me and my husband went out and did this.
Yeah, that happens a bit. And
So,
remember, I'm in California, so like, occasionally there was a gay teacher. But
and nobody probably cared. That's all I'm not asking for political activism. I'm
Mhm.
asking for the option for people to be open to being able to just say, you know, it's a guy. My husband did this. What's the issue with that? It's no different than how teachers have been for years.
Right. I have no problem with people admitting that these things are real. I even had this conversation, or excuse me, I have no problem with anybody trying to make it clear to others that such people are real. That has not, that has nothing to do with anything. There's nothing to oppose. I had this conversation back when Libs and TikTok was making the news more often. I went through a few different videos because there were groomer allegations. So I watched three videos. The only reason we ended up watching three videos is because we ended up dissecting them for so long, trying to figure out what is grooming and what is not. I didn't see anything. I really did just see honest attempts to announce to the world. No, sorry about that. I had a Red Bull before we started. All I saw were honest attempts to announce to the world that these people are real, that they transitioned, and so what. Like one of them was talking about how I forget the exact words, but I remember he talking about when he transitioned, how he was trying to relate to students who, would you remember growing up, a lot of kids were getting kicked out because they were gay.
I this is gonna date me, but I remember Matthew Shepard, that story going around.
Yeah,
And
you told me about that.
yeah, and that is really what changed my outlook initially on, because I didn't know anything about, gay people. I thought I was gay. I thought just because I liked girls, or not liked girls, I thought they were pretty.
Mhm.
I thought I was gay. I thought that meant I was gay. I didn't know anything. But when I seen what happened to Matthew Shepard, I just thought, how could somebody do this? And that's really why I've had the outlook that I have. But I graduated way too long ago. So no. I mean, like, no, I don't remember anyone getting kicked out because they were gay.
No, not out of
Most
school.
oh.
No, not out of school. No. I mean, kids, kids like 15, 16 are end up going couch to couch because mom and dad kicked them out for being gay.
Oh,
But that's what I
fuck
was talking
yes.
about. The videos I saw, he was talking about people he relates to, like people he relates to, basically speaking to that crowd, like people who probably were kicked out because they're gay, and that was all I got out of it. But there were the conversation was around grooming for some reason, and the debate went on for well over an hour for three TikTok videos trying to figure out what the hell is what. And I really didn't see anything. I didn't really see anything specifically suspicious. I really just saw honest attempts to announce to the world who they are, how they feel about themselves. I didn't have any issue with that. Here's where issues come in. Now, I'll reference a book for you. It's called Pathway to Equitable Mathematics. It's in the description. The book is about ending white supremacy in mathematics, which absolutely does not exist. It's a weird perception. It's this weird perception of mathematics that math is dominated by white people, and somehow the rules of mathematics are influenced by white cultures. And it doesn't make any sense because math is a universal language.
Right.
Math is not.
That's why I always loved math, because it was the same, and you know what I mean? Like, it's such an not easy concept, but basic concept. I don't have a strong opinion about that, because what's the reasoning for white supremacy in mathematics?
What there isn't there. Well, the
Okay.
reasoning behind it, that's that's really hard to dissect. Like you remember earlier this year we came across videos talking about how math is racist. It was mentioned in the chats. We didn't really get to explore it on the channel.
Kind of.
It's really hard to explain without all the problems being spelled out in front of you. But part of it is based on ignoring the fact that multiplying anything by 0 equals 0. So first you have to take fundamental rules and ignore them. And under the guise of ending white supremacy, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. I never thought I would see days where people tried to call
What?
math racist. Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
never thought.
I'm sorry. I just don't. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm not woke enough. I found that out in the past few days.
Woke people
But
aren't real people.
okay, but that doesn't make. I don't understand that. I guess my issue is I don't understand that. I'll tell you my issue here in a second.
Okay.
Robert, thank you so much. I personally think that queer teachers themselves should be allowed to teach and talk about their private lives as much as straight teachers. I agree. If they go too far on topics that even straight teachers should never bring up, like fucking, yeah, that would be an issue. That is the problem. I remember my straight teachers talking about how hickey could kill you and shit. Like, I remember talking about straight sex. I mean, I was a senior, but still. But yes, yeah, that is a problem. Like, my teacher had a duct tape thing on her desk to show us when somebody talked about sex, because she's like, this is what your vagina will look like when a baby comes out, like, to scare us. I remember that shit. And she was the coolest fucking teacher. She was my physics teacher.
That stuck with you forever, huh?
Yes.
Well, that's with me. I remember I saw a documentary about women giving birth at home. I've never seen so many women give birth in my life.
Oh my
goodness. It was remarkably impressive. Like all of a sudden, these women just, because a lot of them were doing it. Like some of them were just squatting over a pool, and someone was just reaching out back there, waiting to catch the baby. It's just, I know it was just real quick like that.
So, and that's another thing. Like, we had didn't you have sex education?
Yeah, we did. But that came. Let me see. What was it? Like 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
So, and that was with a permission slip.
Right, but
now, like
but
you look
should
back
they
to
teach queer sex?
But one more time. Sorry, you cut out for me. One more time.
No. I said, if we have straight sex education and we want straight people to be safe, shouldn't they teach queer sex also?
I don't mind that there's no problem with teaching that these people exist, but why are you teaching that in math class? And then now some people are doing it that they're trying to teach this stuff to 2nd graders. They don't even have a concept of this stuff.
No, they don't. No.
So, but then you understand where many people are coming from. And now here's the thing: when it comes to sex education, you can't treat it all as equal, because different kids react differently. That they are people too, so they're going to have different reactions to things that they learn. So different kids may not even be ready for that. Oh yeah, again,
right.
sex education. I was the one with the joke, but I already knew that stuff before
I've never heard it taught in 2nd grade, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe.
Oh no, I was not in 2nd grade. Like for me, I think it was 6th grade.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it was 6th grade, because that's when we went into middle school, and then we had a refresher course in 9th grade, because they were like, it's about that time, you're getting some hormones.
Yeah, I think we had 3 of those.
So
But it's always
I
funny when we have that conversation because everyone sees that permission slip for more sex education. We already know how to fuck. What are you talking about? So it's funny to
right.
see that every 3 years.
Well, and like I think sixth grade is a good like starting point because if you go too late, kids are already going to be super hormonal and not know why they feel this way. If you go
Mhm.
too early, it's creepy, right? So that sixth grade I think is perfect, but I don't have any like strong feeling about the white supremacy stuff because I haven't looked into it. But that's because my mind doesn't process that. I don't understand how there could be white supremacy in math. I'm sorry, it doesn't seem logical to me.
I can explain to you best. Now, let me use a more proper terminology. You probably heard all throughout the last few years, people keep saying the term critical race theory, and in its purest form has not been implemented in public schools as far
Not
as
at
I know.
all. No, not at
But
all. It's a college level course.
the core of the problem, the term social justice, which is a proven lie, does not belong in schools. And as I said, proven lie because it's in the name, social justice. There are no subtypes of justice. Justice is one thing for everybody. If you understand the Lady Justice statue, you understand what I'm talking about. She
There's
now
different types of justice. What are you talking about?
no justice is one
Ju-
thing.
Just like there's
No,
different types of theft, there's different types of justice. It
no
depends on what
then
level.
let me
I
explain
understand the
the reason
base.
I use the Lady Justice statue is because
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
she captures the entirety of that in one symbol. Like this is really the best similarity. I don't care about any other symbol whatsoever. This is the best one ever. So Lady Justice, remember, she's blindfolded because justice is for everyone. So now she can't handpick. She's a woman because I believe that her temperament, her more even temperament, is better for justice, and men would be expected to take things farther quicker. She holds the scales to remind us that the offense has to be equal to the correction. She holds a sword to remind us that justice can be swift and final. And that's none of that has anything to do with social justice. Social justice isn't. It's not justice. It's not about any real equality. It
I
actually
can
has to do a
understand
lot
what
with
you're saying.
personal vengeance.
I
It's all a personal thing. It's all scaled. It's all about scaling minority problems with white people historically, which is
I
stuff that which is stuff that it doesn't. We know that history is there. Like, I learned that stuff in history too. You probably learned it too. There were days where the white man was out to get me, but
oh for
you know,
sure.
I mean, big old jiggly cheeks when I say this. I was not taught that the white man is still out to get me. That's a huge difference from what kids are being taught today. They're being taught the white man is still out to get me and other people who look like me. With that,
Okay.
I don't know
Wait.
that it's. Go ahead.
Are you white?
No, not in the least.
I didn't think so. That's what I was just making sure. That's why I was like, I didn't mean to like offend you, but I was like, I didn't think you were white. Let me get this because I do want to add something to that. Between
Okay.
the two of you, how many kids do you have? Only asking because it sounds like y'all are telling actual parents they shouldn't have a choice in what is taught to their kids. Not saying that at all, and that's super personal. I'm not asking that question, but thank you for the tip. Um, I'm not.
I do
I
want to
don't
comment.
want. I
Can I
don't want.
comment briefly on what he said?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Education, again, there's a real definition for education. It's about necessary cause effect relationships in a given subject. So whether or not any of us are parents does not matter. Cause and effect is independent of our individual thoughts. When you're going to send a child to education, you're supposed to be teaching them necessary cause effect relationships. So parents are sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to that child's education. Like we should all know right now that being cold and getting the flu aren't actually related. It's flu
Right,
season right now in Australia, and it's also the summertime. The cold has
right.
nothing to do with it, but mom and dad are still going to tell these kids being cold is going to get you sick, and it doesn't matter what the teachers say. So parents, if you're going to, if the education has to be about the child, it does not have to be about mom and dad necessarily. Now, when it comes to sex education, obviously there's something else to think about. But by and large, whatever the kids are ready to learn, that is what they should be doing. Mom and dad do not need to get in the way of that. So go ahead
I
with whatever
agree.
you would say.
I agree, and that's why I was more against the "Don't Say Gay" bill. But I also do think there has to be a respect between parents and between schools. They have to, they as much as you have to teach the children the basics, you have to also have a good relationship with that school. So I think there's got to be a respect there. But
There is.
there, and you know what? I have a real issue like when people don't want to teach real history, when people don't want to do these kind of things. The only way we can't repeat our mistakes, as cliche as it sounds, is to know and grow from our mistakes. But are schools really teaching them that the white man is still keeping them down? Like, where have you heard that from? Because I personally have not. Like, I've heard the LGBTQ stuff, but I haven't heard the white man bad stuff.
Because that has been what social justice is about. It is a concept. First off, it's an evolving term. When the term was founded, it was just the idea that justice, or really criminal justice, should be based on everybody's perspective involved in the community, not just the lawmakers. Somehow it evolved into this concept of scaling minority problems with white privilege. I don't know exactly when that started, but that's really what it's become today. So when people are talking about social justice, they're really talking about revenge on the white man, even if the guys that look like me aren't asking for that. So now, when it comes to history, a big one that stands out to me. So a conversation that comes up a lot: the question about America and racism. And truth be told, historically, racism was a big part of America. There isn't really a debate about that. We all know the history of slavery, but we also, if we're paying attention, we also should know that slavery was mainly a Southern thing. So when, I forget her full name, but I think the last name is Hannah Jones. She was the one who founded the 1619 Project, or at least she was the biggest face in that.
Right.
And her her thesis was about the first documented 20 Africans to touch down in the U.S.
Right.
When the colonies were formed. And her argument is that the American Revolution was about preserving slavery. She has been corrected. She was given times and dates where this, basically just showing this was not necessarily the case.
Right. I was going to say,
Like
I thought that was debunked.
Yeah, she was. So even though she was corrected, she still published her errors, and that's when she started being accused of putting an ideology before historical fact.
Right, and I take issue with that personally. We've seen a lot of it, like people. I get it. Like I have an issue with people doing the whole like book burning shit. But if you're unwilling to teach something like mouse, whatever you say it,
I
it's
remember
weird
that,
to
yeah.
me, right? Like it's weird to me. Let me get this tip.
Mhm.
Robert, thank you so much. I'm worried that this will go the opposite direction and have the right push their views on. Oh, they already are. They already are. Come on now, quit playing. Much to counter the left in schools. They used to have a neutral view, and now it's one or the other. A school should be politically neutral zone, and I agree with that 100%. But we're already seeing Christian, I don't know, conservatives. Not all, obviously, but I'm talking about people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and that ilk wanting
she's
to
batshit.
She's batshit fucking crazy.
That's part of the fun for me.
Yeah. I do love making fun of white trash Barbie, but
no, there's few things are more entertaining than a woman that lives in a trash can. I'm 100% okay with Marjorie Taylor Greene
like
flapping her lips about whatever.
in the midterms, nothing kept me more entertained between what she said and Herschel Walker. Like we're gonna get some vampires out here.
I told somebody in a Forbes comment, I'm pro-choice. That's why I'm voting for Herschel Walker.
Oh my god. Oh my god. It's scary that he was so close to winning. He's got to be the dumbest person the dumbest politician, to be fair.
I was hoping. Yeah, I was hoping he went.
No, you were not.
But it's only Georgia, and it's just the Senate. You won't miss him. Nothing's gonna happen.
It was entertaining while it lasted.
Like the guy that said Why did he say he was going to defend Martians?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
said something like
yeah.
that.
Martians, not illegal aliens. Martians. I
I love when politicians can't speak English and it's the only language they know. It's awesome. Like Donald Trump
Yeah.
sent that example for me.
and that's the thing. I think we're very close to our views on this. I
Mhm.
don't want any political I don't want political doctrine in school. There are certain universal truths, kindness, compassion, those kind of things that I think should be taught as a whole, not just to a group of people, whether you believe they're excluding white men or they're excluding the queer community. It should be
Right. All right.
it should be universal. But
Well,
I
let's.
just have never seen it. Maybe in college, I'll give you that. But where have you ever seen any real CRT?
Well, like I said, I have not thoroughly studied critical race theory, but I do understand its premise, and it's a faulty premise. I don't even think it should be taught in universities. Not because they shouldn't have the choice, but they should not be teaching this as a subject of fact. It's really not. It's all presumption. It's the same thing. It all comes down to this.
It's a theory.
To that,
It's not fact. That's why it's called a
right?
theory.
Well, yeah, but and see that, and that's the misleading thing because you're going to say theory when you're talking about higher subjects. Theories, by their definition, are collections of facts that in their sum that create a sum effect. And that's the explanation to a
Right.
larger phenomenon. So if you're going to say theories necessarily follow rules. So what are the rules? But critical race theory is a presumption. It starts with presumptions about, again, white people out to get minority. It's all about dissecting that history. The more properly, they frame it as using historical institutions to target minority.
Okay,
And
wait.
that's when they start talking about white supremacy. Things like redlining were proven. Redlining was a real issue. Okay, now they want to say redlining is still going on, even with federal laws in place. I don't know how well enforced they are, but by my gathering, it's really not that easy to cheat. I'll say that, but here's what's going on. So they talk about a lot of people talk about disproportionate. You've heard that term thrown around all year round. Disproportionate. Black people disproportionately rejected for new housing compared to white people.
Because a lot of it is true.
Right, but here's also the thing. Contrary to popular belief, anti-discrimination laws can make things worse. I learned this because I tried to sue my employer. I actually went to a federal office called the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Committee, and I wasn't even trying to sue for any racial discrimination. Just an interesting thing I learned that because I'm Latino, they automatically file my case as a racial discrimination case. I didn't ask for that. I was
Oh,
talking about other things. But again, because of the color of my skin, I was automatically filed. Ain't that something? But
that
anyway,
is honestly really dumb, in my opinion.
what's up?
Unless you asked for that, I think that's really dumb.
Right. Like I said, I kept telling this woman I'm not asking for that. I honestly I wanted to be honest about the facts of my case because I wanted to make the right case. If I don't have a case, so be it. But I wanted to make the right case. But she said I didn't really have a choice. It's federal law. She had to do it. So we got into a conversation about discrimination in the workplace, and something I learned from her is that employers tend to hire in order to seem consistent with anti-discrimination laws. They'll hire based on the application pool. So if it's a certain percentage white, certain percentage black, then that means we'll say so 90% of applicants one color, 10% the other. So if there are 10 job openings, that means if in that 10%, if that's all black, that means only one guy got the job. So 9 people necessarily got screwed over, and it won't hold in court as evidence of discrimination because employers are hiring consistently with the application pool. In other words, diversity quotas. So they've been doing. That's the thing that works. Employers have been doing this for decades, And still, the conversation around discrimination and hiring practices is ongoing and even growing larger. But if, let's say, it was first come, first serve. So let's say that 10% black population got there first before all the white guys, and they all get the job, that would have been fair. But unfortunately, anti-discrimination laws actually make things more complicated, not less complicated. So ain't that something? What we thought was
I don't think so. I don't think so, because it gives you, not everybody is that honest, right? You're going to have your 1 in 100 that are willing, because let's not pretend like white supremacy, like not necessarily white supremacy and racists exist. Let's not pretend like those people aren't around. And
What's
if they're
the
the
difference
one,
between the two?
some people, and I don't understand it. Again, I'm not woke enough. Some people look at white supremacy as a system, and I've looked into it, and it's like really off to me. And
It's vague. No, that's
it's
the thing. But
I
but
can't
that's the thing. It's
understand it.
always
It's
been that
not a
way.
system, it's a person, some person or group of people that are just terrible fucking bigots. But I can't look at white supremacy as a system, because again, I'm not woke enough to understand it, I guess. My logic isn't all the way gone.
Well,
um
doing my best to explain it. That's how these things are scaled. They look at the advantage, like socioeconomic status of white people, by example. That's the best one. White people historically, yes, because let's say in America, white people historically have had the best economic advantages, so naturally that does get preserved
why
in
we need
families and passed down.
reparations.
What's up?
Reparations would equal that out.
I cut out.
No, I said reparations would equal that out.
And you don't want to start that conversation. I promise you that will go bad for reasons you do not understand. Reparations is one of the biggest steps backwards you can imagine.
Why?
Why? There's a lot of history missing. And when that history gets implemented, if that conversation keeps going and people keep asking for more, well, that's what you're going to get. Actually, it's just people are just going to keep asking for more, and that will
So you think
further.
it's like give a mouse a cookie issue?
Yeah, the people are going to keep taking it. It can escalate for reasons you don't understand. If you really want that, I can throw it out there. But well, you tell me because it's your channel.
Well, NWO said I'm talking about institutional or systematic racism, and maybe I am. I guess I knew them as two different terms, but systematic racism is real. It's been proven that it's real. That black men get harder sentences than white men. Stuff like that. Like calling up for a job interview. There was a study, and I don't have it right offhand. I apologize. I should have, but I was like, I'm going into this blind. I don't fucking care. Where the name Tyrone, as compared to Timothy, got denied multiple times. So systematic racism is real, but I don't understand how white supremacy is related. I guess maybe I just haven't done my homework. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, what goes on and again, this is all stemming from the same political theories as social justice. There are too many. They have too many different ways of labeling racism. Like you just said institutional racism, systemic racism, and white supremacy. Let me just propose a thought experiment. Let's end all that other stuff, white supremacy, institutional racism, and systemic racism, but let's not end racism. What would change? Just to get people to challenge themselves to explain what the hell any of that terminology actually means.
Wait,
Now, if it's something more specific to how racism is actually applied, well, that makes sense. But when the term systemic racism was becoming more popular, there were a lot of people saying that systemic racism is something worse than racism, but nobody ever explained what the hell that is. So they eventually just stopped trying to do that, and now they just go saying racism or systemic racism, but they never
I kind of explain what that is. Systematic racism is basically racism within the systems, the housing, all the different systems of government.
Okay.
The court system, the housing system. There's race because and I don't know that there's a way to end it. I would like to say there was, but if you hire one real white supremacist that's in charge of housing or in charge of hiring practices, or you're gonna get that. So it's not bullshit. It's just a very complex problem that I am only base level experience with.
All right. Well, let's try to dissect the meaning of systemic racism first, because depending on who you ask, it means racism within the system, and I don't even know why that needs a terminology. Like a racist cop is still racist, whether or not he's a cop. So I don't understand why. I don't understand why you would need to say systemic racism to explain him. But then there's other people who will say that the rules are designed to be racist. So that's where things get much more controversial. Actually, I think things just get outright disagreeable.
Well, like gerrymandering, is that what you mean by the rules?
Stuff like that.
That could be a good example of it. Like there's absolutely but what I have issue with and why I have remained very independent with my vote is we can say the right gerrymanders. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they're in power. Still try. But guess who gerrymanders when they're in power? The Democrats do it also. So that's where I have the issues. It can't be rules for thee, but not for me. You know what I mean?
Well, unfortunately, that's what the 14th Amendment was meant to prevent. But unfortunately, both parties hate the 14th. And when it comes down to so a moment ago, where were we talking about? Oh, I was talking about the system. So I was trying to bring it back to the rules fundamentally, whether or not they are racist. And this is important because if you're going to teach kids in public schools, there's racism within the rules fundamentally. You have to be able to point to the racism specifically.
Right.
So by my understanding, remember, as I've explained here before, the U.S. Constitution was generally written to regulate the federal government. The states weren't specifically bound by the U.S. Constitution unless otherwise specifically stated, like states cannot negotiate with foreign bodies. So California can't negotiate with China, right, by example. Exactly. That has to be done through a representative that in the Senate. That's specifically, the Senate in general, but California as a state cannot negotiate with another country.
Of course.
And that much is specifically in the Constitution. But things like religion and speech and even gun rights, that was all written in the Bill of Rights to keep the federal government from putting limits on any of that. States could have done whatever they wanted, but they generally went with it. Like California's Constitution actually has a lot more freedoms and is even more specific than the U.S. Constitution, but it doesn't even have gun rights in it. And that's not because of Democrats. This state was founded, I think, in 1851. So it has nothing to do with modern Democrats. It just goes to show you they didn't have to if they didn't want to. So they chose to regulate guns through the criminal code instead of through the Constitution. But when it comes to racism, I have yet to see anything specifically in the rules that actually points to racism. As far as I can tell, the wording of the constitutions generally were framed, or at least the U.S. Constitution, they were not written to isolate white from the rest. At least it's not in the wording. Now, if it's in there, I missed it. And I know some people will point to previous court decisions.
Wasn't it originally in the Constitution that black people were 1/2 compared to white men?
The 3/5 thing was not. No, that wasn't. No, what the Supreme Court determined, because remember that your representation in the House of Representatives is based on your population. But since the South wanted slaves, theoretically they could just go get slaves from wherever the hell just to expand their numbers, and they could get greater representation in the House, and then they would just dominate the House.
That's an example of how it's.
But the reason they said the 3/5 system, it's not. Here's the thing: the U.S. Constitution didn't specifically address slavery at that time. It didn't forbid it or even Yeah, well, they didn't regulate slavery.
Right.
It was, I mean, discrimination
It was
in
a safe
general.
thing.
Discrimination in general is not even specifically addressed in the U.S. Constitution. But let me take a moment to dissect that. We'll circle back to the whole 3/5 thing. So, freedom of speech, by example. We say whatever we want, even if it's offensive. If people don't like it, they can call it racist, even if it's not. They're all free to do so. They're free to disagree. The government cannot compel you to speak for or against anybody. Remember,
Right.
it is an individual right. It belongs to you. So it's your choice to do it or not do it.
And most people
They,
misunderstand it.
and you also have at will employment. At will employment means you can be terminated or hired at the employer's choosing. They don't owe you an explanation. Now, you also have anti-discrimination laws in place at the federal level. So it's a weird thing. So you can't terminate somebody for their skin color, but you can terminate them without an explanation.
Right.
So it doesn't seem to make sense. It's I can't call them dirty words as I fire them, but I can fire them without saying anything to them at all.
Are you sure
Now,
about that?
generally, yes, unless your
I've
state
never heard of that.
has
I'll take your word for it. I believe you. I just never heard of that before.
at will employment. Well, generally, every state in the U.S. has at will employment, unless your state law forbids specific actions. Like we all know this, like sexual harassment and
Right.
retaliation, which something that people don't really get correct. But sexual harassment, people understand. You grab a girl's butt at work, you're fired. That's just that's the simplest form of it. So sexual harassment is just illegal anyway. But when it comes down to your employment, you are at will unless the law specifically states certain actions are forbidden. So that's all constitutionally allowed. And now you have anti-discrimination laws in federal code. How does that make sense? You have the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment, the first section was written to abolish all involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. The second section gave Congress the power to, in a real general sense, add further regulations in order to support the meaning of the first section. So a Supreme Court case at some point, I forget the exact title, determined that because discrimination was the spirit, that ending
You just
discrimination was the
became a
spirit.
robot.
Hold on.
Oh, you're good
Hold
there.
on. There are buttons for this. It sounds good right now?
Yeah, you're good right there. Yeah, I
Okay.
looked it up. You're right. 49 states have at will employment. I'm sorry. I had no idea.
Right. So like I said, the 13th Amendment was written to abolish slavery. It abolishes slavery. It abolishes involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime.
Right.
So the second section was interpreted by the Supreme Court at some point to mean that Congress can regulate discrimination as long as it's in the spirit of the 13th Amendment. So that's why anti-discrimination laws exist. And now you also have religious exemptions, which is a weird thing. Based by my understanding of history, I don't think that's been properly applied in a long time. The test that's being used to measure religious exemption is called the Lemon test. It was named after one of the judges, the last name Lemon, because one of the first questions that was asked in the Supreme Court is what constitutes a religious practice. The founders made it clear in the Federalist Papers, which were written to convince the American population to adopt the U.S. Constitution. The founders made it clear that the freedom of religion is meant to preserve the freedom of opinion, but actions can still be regulated. But the courts wanted to determine a test to make sure they understand what separates lawful or unlawful action from legitimate religious practice. And here's a good one, and this came out of Oregon, challenging the Supreme Court: animal sacrifice. So as things stand right now, animal sacrifice is a constitutional protection.
Jesus.
Because you can hunt animals for food, so you can kill an animal. So what's the difference between killing an animal for food and killing an animal to pray to a god?
I mean, I get it. That actually brings up a recent issue that happened. How do you feel about there was and I don't know what state. I apologize. I saw it on TikTok. Shut up, everyone.
Tommy.
A right a restaurant refused service to a very anti-LGBT Christian group.
They have a
And they
choice.
refused. Okay, I was gonna say I don't have an issue with it. We've gone through the whole like you choose to be religious, you don't choose your skin color. I think these things are very different. And I have no problem with religion. I'm not saying that.
All right. Well,
You do you, boo. Just keep it out of my
let,
face.
let me scale that one in relation to the case of the baker in Colorado. So for people who may not know that case, it was a homosexual couple went to a baker in Colorado that was also Christian, asked for two male figurines on top of the wedding cake,
Yep.
and the baker said no because it's against their religion. The customer tried to sue. The Supreme Court said that's not allowed because now you're infringing on religious liberty. Okay, now let's take this case. So you said I didn't actually read this headline, so I'm going by what you just told me. So let's say me as an atheist. Remember, the freedom of religion means I don't have to
Freedom
take up a
from it.
religion if I don't want to.
Yep.
Same with the freedom of assembly. I don't have to assemble with anyone I don't want to. It's my choice. So in that case, me as an atheist, if I don't want Christians in my restaurant, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that, just in case anybody's wondering, but it's basically the same thing. So if they
Right.
try to take that to the Supreme Court, if they even bother to hear it, I think even right now they'll just say no, because a Christian to an atheist would do the same thing. Therefore, an atheist to a Christian should be able to do the same thing. So it all falls under the same right. Does that answer
Okay,
your question?
then let's take this a little bit further. What about at CVS? They're allowing their pharmacist to refuse birth control.
You said yes. Oh, CVS. Is that what you said?
CVS, like the drugstore.
Yeah, the cheap ass drugstore with Olive Life's winner.
Yeah.
Okay. The when it came down to birth control, yeah, insofar the Supreme Court has upheld the decisions around birth control, where if by your religion you don't want to perform any kind of anything that translates to abortion, roughly, then yeah, you don't have to, and your employer can't make you. Right off the top of my head, that one I'm those kinds of things I'm a little bit fuzzy around. I'm still trying to weigh those myself.
That one seems weird to me because that's your job. What if there's not another pharmacist on staff? Like that one seems a little bit more of a gray area where I'm I'm just like it's
Well, I know part of it is government
for
licensing.
years.
Was I also know part of it is government licensing, so they can't, since government rules are at play, then constitutional principles apply. Like there is a similar, no, actually not similar to this, just where it talks about rules at play, where federal rules are at play, so federal law applies. There was the colleges. I think it was a Jewish university that didn't want the after school groups that were gay. Does that ring a bell?
They'll allow church after school.
Right, no, it was a private university. That was the thing. So there was a question.
No federal funding.
What's up?
No federal funding.
I don't think so. I don't think they were
federal
taking
funding. They have to play by the rules.
Well, yeah, if there is federal funding, they do have to. If not, then it's theirs. They don't have to if they don't want to. But yeah, that was the ruling, though. They did uphold that because no federal funding was at play, so they did not have to accept this group. It fell under religious liberty. It's still your choice.
That's crazy.
So anyway, let's get back to what we were really talking about, because we're talking about discrimination in the rules.
Oh yes.
So again, now that the U.S.
I actually
Constitution
have some examples. Like if you're talking about systematic racism, we brought up reparations, right? So if white people are 77%, they hold 90% of the wealth. wouldn't that help equal the playing field?
Hold
Because
on, you're cutting out. But
I'm
when it comes,
sorry.
that's good. That could have been on my end only. But anyway, as far as equaling the playing field, I don't know why the playing field has to be equal. Okay, I'm not loaded. I got to work for
Oh my
everything I
God.
have.
Are you a pick yourself up by your bootstraps kind of guy?
Yeah, yeah. Move your ass, do your own
Oh,
work. What's up?
nothing. I'm just laughing at you.
I didn't hear you though. I have to turn my phone down because Restream will fucking melt my phone.
Oh yeah,
So
it makes it super hot.
okay, yeah. See, so anyway, yes, I am. I am the kind of guy that believes move your ass, do your own work. Not without empathy, but I do generally believe in keeping what you earn. If people want to share from there, yes, they should have a choice to share from there. Taxation, there's a famous saying, and I forgot who said it, that the power to tax is the power to destroy. And taxation is killing California. Hell, when my parents moved here in 1978, they moved from New York because taxes kept going up. In California, shit, back then you can get a car for three grand or 4 grand. A house maybe costs somewhere between 10 grand and 20 grand. Now, I can compare that now. You should see the houses up the street from where I am right now that are $1.2 million.
I can't imagine. I know how bad. I've heard how bad it is.
No, they're so close. You could hear your neighbors fart. You
Yeah.
barely have
Fuck.
anything in your
Why
yard.
would you want to live in California then?
Well, everything I have is here. Remember, when my
That's
parents
fair.
got here, everything was great. This was probably the best economy in the United States at the time because you really could just go get a different job if you didn't like the one you had, and you were
Right.
probably going to make it. Some, yeah, of course, different jobs pay differently. Yeah, that's always been the case here, but prices prices have gone up dramatically over the last few years. Like even just the last few years, things I was paying there were these breakfast sandwiches I used to get for it was a little under $6 if I bought two of them. For a while, it was over $13 because of taxes,
Jeez, oh Pete.
and it just recently went back under $12. And that's just maybe because gas prices went down a little bit, or maybe because the store is just being a little bit more generous. I don't know, but yeah, the power to tax is the power to destroy. So when people are talking about equalizing the playing field, they're also at the same time talking moral obligation, and that's not something I personally believe in. Because when you talk about moral obligations, in order to enforce that, you need somebody else to write the rules. And who's writing the rules? I'm not. Obviously, I'm not. If I'm saying it should be a choice and other people are saying I shouldn't have a choice, somebody else is trying to write the rules for me.
Right.
And again, I really don't believe that. So to me, so again, a lot of white people, yes, were born into wealth. Oh, fucking well, that's not me. I got to do my own work. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. I have work ethic.
And I
I'm
agree
okay with
with that to a point, but when black people are twice as likely to be unemployed, it's not always pick yourself about by your bootstraps because you're having issues getting unemployment or getting employed. So I get what you're saying, but I also think there needs to be I don't know the answers. I don't know the answers. I'll be the first to say that. But I do think that there needs to be some systemic changes. And it's not bullshit. Elon, look it up. It's literally from a test. Or a test. What are they called? A study.
well,
It's an issue, right? And
I do
but
agree.
how do you fix that? You don't.
Well, you could really cut back on taxes. That does help quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because tax,
You do
well,
live in America, right? Yeah, that's cute.
but you have to understand because people don't understand like a small percentage in like a 6% sales tax at the register in California. That's just at the state level. You go to Los Angeles County, and I think the San Francisco counties, it's a little bit higher, and that adds up more than people actually understand. Like it's I go to a store, I get a 1.5 liter bottle of water. That when I bought that, let me see, 4 years ago, without a sale price, that was 69 cents. Today, it's a dollar
I
49.
was gonna say 69 cents. Where the fuck are you shopping?
Well, I'm still in California. If that's more than you would pay, but understand taxation has been on the rise in California for a very long time.
Right.
And as you might expect, the poorest, if you believe that in helping the poorest, taxation doesn't do that. Taxation will keep you poor because you do get a lot of tax cuts if you're below a certain income level. But then what happens? Those tax cuts are very generous. But then when you start making real money, you start spending more in taxes again. So
Of
then
course.
you
Yep.
you might end up poor again. And California isn't doing anything to stop that. So if you believe that systemic problems, that racism is an issue in the system, even in California, the kind of politicians that said they're here to end this stuff, where does it start? I'm 37 and I've never seen it. So when is it going to begin?
Yeah, probably never.
And as far as redistribution, it's really the proper political and economic term. Again, you're talking about moral obligation at that point, and I don't agree with that. I have a hard. Obviously, there are some things that good people should never do. If the bad guy says he's right to do it, we shouldn't be listening. So it really doesn't matter. But when you're talking about redistribution, remember the same rules actually apply to the poorest. So taxing them in order to balance out economic issues should obviously be counterproductive. Yet for some reason, that's what happens. They pay the same tax as I do, but since they pay less money, since they make less money, they lose a higher percentage of their income. Because their money goes a lot faster after taxes, and then they still have to pay. They still have to pay for all their expenses. So
I'm
I
not
say
saying
instead of,
redistribute wealth. I don't want to be confused here. I'm not saying redistribution of wealth. I'm saying something that is owed. That is owed.
and again, that conversation can go south a lot quicker than you think.
Oh, I'm sure
Because,
it
like I said,
can.
what's up?
I said, "Oh, I'm sure it can." But you can't argue that it is owed. How can you
I do
argue that it's
argue that
owed?
it's so. I don't feel that anybody I've never met. I don't feel responsible for the generations past,
You're
and
not
I
paying
don't
it,
feel
and
like
you're
anyone.
using feelings. I'm using facts. It is owed
How do you determine that as a fact?
because it was literally promised years ago.
Where was the promise? I never got that promise.
Are you serious? You don't
Yeah.
remember the so many acres in a mule thing? You don't remember that?
No, I know of it. I don't remember the exact expression, but I don't remember that as a promise. And even if, why does that have to come out of my pocket? That
Nobody
history
said
is
it
about
did.
white and black people. I'm neither one of it.
But
I,
nobody said it was coming out of your pocket.
because is really about money, and that's typically what
Right.
the conversation revolves around: taxation and giving to people based on their skin color. At least in America, that's what it's always been about taxing and giving to the black man. Are we talking about something else at this point?
We're talking about reparations.
What's up?
I said we're talking about reparations.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right,
Because
but you're
as far
saying
back
I
as I can
don't
remember,
feel. Did you notice what you said even? I don't feel like it's owed. It doesn't
right?
matter what you feel like. It's owed.
But what you're doing there is giving yourself the moral high ground, and I want to know where that comes from because
No, I'm
I
not.
don't
I'm
know
not
why.
using feeling. You are.
No, but you said it's owed. Where, like, how is that determined? What were the rules? Where was the promise in writing, and how was that promise actually met?
Let me find it.
Okay,
I don't know exactly where it's at, but I do.
because as far back as I can remember, that really the issue,
It
part
was
of the issue
40,
on
40
reparations is
acres in a mule.
right. Yeah, that much I understand. But what I'm trying to understand is the written promise, if such even existed, because the conversation on reparations has always been that a promise has never actually been written or even attempted to be executed.
General William T. Sherman Special Field Order issued the order on January 16th, 1865.
He ordered what? it might just be my phone. But
No,
you were cutting out on
I'm
my
sorry. I moved the mic a little closer.
Okay.
General William T. Sherman, Special Field Order Number 15, issued on January 16th, 1865.
What was the order?
That Sherman prescribed the 40 acres in that order, but not the mule. The mule came
Okay.
later.
And is that order still active?
I have no idea. I'm looking.
Because remember, it's a legal thing. So if the order isn't even still active, or if it expired, then it doesn't apply today. So, however, that 40 acres to a mule, whatever that is, if you adjust for inflation, whatever that is today, who's paying for that? Because
Oh
if
my
it's me,
God.
then yeah, that's a problem.
They called in the order is even racist itself. They called them poor, debased people.
Well, like I said, I'd have to understand the legality of that because that that part of history, I don't. In fact, if somebody in the chat knows more than either of us right now,
Yeah, I'm trying to look. I'm sorry. I'm trying to see if it's still active. Da-da-da. Um,
well, let me
I can't. I'm
well,
trying.
let me
I'm
just
sorry, you guys. Go
while
ahead
we're
and go
researching
ahead.
that though. Well, while we're researching that, let me just continue with the general sense of what we're actually talking about. We were
Okay.
talking about this long history, this long economic history, really, where Americans generally benefited. So even though a very small percentage of Americans actually owned slaves, economics really affected everybody. States traded across states. So the North did benefit from slavery, but they are not responsible for it. To my knowledge, slavery was virtually non-existent in the North. Maybe periodically and in very small increments, but as far as I know, slavery was generally not a Northern thing. But the conversation about reparations is about the United States owing the black population something because of black
For that,
ancestors.
yeah, for the ancestral trauma.
Okay. The ancestral trauma, I don't want anything to do with that because I am not responsible for white people past. So I am not going to say
And
that white
I
people
don't think anyone's mad at you for it specifically, but you can't
they
deny that there is ancestral trauma.
no they I want to know what actually want to know what that means before I say yes or no. Because
Okay,
trauma is
think
one of those
of
words that people like to throw around, and I'd like it to have something. I'd like to have something firm to grasp if I'm going to even use that.
growing. Okay, like you a lot of times you hear them use like Holocaust survivors as an example, right?
Mm.
That I what have they gone through? What happened to them? And the way that that trauma affects them as a parent affects their child, and it's passed on from generation to generation. How people are raised, what kind of living conditions they have.
Right,
There
but
is
here's the thing:
you can't.
generational.
There's trauma.
Well, generational trauma is another. It's part of that political language that I is really what one of those things that comes to mind when we're talking about politics in schools is one of those things I don't really want in there is because
It's not a
it seems like
political thing.
loaded
It's a
language.
psychological thing.
But how do you diagnose that? If you're going to say it's trauma, explain. Give me a diagnostic standard. Like
You would.
here, this is also something that was being implemented in California. Again, it stopped because of public backlash. The educators were not wise enough to just ignore this concept altogether. Uh, it's a what's it called? Oh, it's called trauma informed uh trauma informed pedagogy. In other words, trauma informed thinking styles. Hi, Hoodie Justice. How are you? Anyway, so again, this is something that was going to be taught in schools and in math. For fuck's sake, basically is a presumption that there is trauma based on based on common life experiences. You're really just telling the students to assume that the trauma is actually there. You're not teaching them to actually diagnose trauma first. And truth be told, math class ain't the place for that anyway. But
Why
it's
would that be
talking about
taught in math?
trauma.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm
trauma should
old.
not be taught in math.
Right. Is that, are you saying that's
Well,
being done?
I have to tell you what I was talking about. So California, because remember their conversation a while back about racism in mathematics, which is fundamentally unsound, but politically it would make perfect sense. But this is the problem with implementing politics in schools. People don't seem to understand you could make anything political. The difference between political and social is just the context of the conversation, but it's all the same subjects. So what was going on, California taking this conversation, again, for politics and for votes, taking this way too seriously, implementing social justice in mathematics. And again, it's all about scaling problems with minorities and white people historically.
White people
And
suck. I'm just fucking with you guys. I swear to God.
but that's what Elon said is true. Trauma has nothing to do with mathematics. It doesn't belong.
No, and
Right.
I can agree to that. Absolutely. I think that's silly.
But that was something that was being imposed, and one of the references is a book I cited earlier called Pathway to Equitable Mathematics. Again, it's about ending white supremacy in mathematics, which again, if you know the history of math, I know some of that. You know, I used to follow a lot of people. You might remember there was actually a strong presence of atheists trying to promote science a few years back. Like Penn Jillette, Michael Shermer, or Neil deGrasse Tyson is probably the biggest face in all of that. He was all part of that movement. Those are guys that inspired me to look more into history. Mathematics, that's what people don't understand, that science as we know it is actually an extension of mathematics. And the whole point of it is to apply mathematics to observation. So we're just using math to observe that. And some of that math came from, Nigeria. A lot of the geometry that we use today for modern engineering was founded in Nigeria. What the Greeks did, or the whatever Europeans at the time, they went back and forth between. Well, they went everywhere. They went to Mongolia, Egypt, anywhere that was practicing mathematics. They traveled everywhere and learned from each other. And Nigeria is part of that conversation. Same thing with Maya, the Maya people, whatever India was called at the time. Well, I think they were still Hindu people at the time, but everybody paid significant contribution to the mathematics that helped lay out the rules for anything in modern science today. So I thought the conversation around race in mathematics would have properly diffused any political leanings that are being imposed in public schools right now. And instead, they found ways to talk around it. Because, like I said, they think the rules, because they're written by white people, they think there's something wrong with the rules. That whole idea about, like, do you remember this? 2 + 2 = 5. Do you remember that going around for a while?
No, I
Tristan?
kind of remember. I kind of remember somebody making a video about it, but because it said 2 + 2 = 5,
Well,
I assumed they were fucking stupid, and I didn't click on it.
well, they weren't talking shit though. Like
Are
I
you
said, this
talking
is
about Twitter people? That was on
no,
Twitter, wasn't it?
no. I can show you a conversation from West Africa. These are all black people talking, like native West Africans, talking about ending white supremacy in mathematics.
Stop it. That's
I can't do it right now because I'm
I
on
believe
leave
you. I
recently.
believe you, but it's stupid.
And I know it's bizarre. I agree.
And it is, but my issue is, and this brings us back to the beginning of the conversation, the demonization of teachers simply for being queer.
Mhm.
And it is happening. Don't act like it's not. Like, have you
No, don't get me
noticed?
wrong. I 100% acknowledge that demonization. Don't misunderstand. I do acknowledge that. I also, but that alone, that is another conversation too, though. It is true that does happen, and it is true that just because someone is gay or bisexual, a lot of that does get lumped in with a wealth of sexual misconduct. And of
Right, and
course,
that's an issue too. calling everybody that is queer groomers is the lavender scare from the 1940s all over again, when gay
No
people
argument
weren't
from me.
even allowed to work in the government because they were afraid. Like, this idea that queer people are going to turn your kids gay is this
See, and this is
sounds
why I
like
said
Twitter speak, but it is harmful when you
and this
use
is
the
why I
word
said
groomer
parents.
improperly. When you use
Right,
that word improperly, it loses the fucking meaning, and that's what the right has done.
And this is also why I said parents are sometimes the worst things to happen to a kid's education. Now they think their kids are going to catch the gay, like something that I thought was disproven 30 years ago, but here we are, round
Yeah.
two. No, that much is absolutely wrong. Don't misunderstand me. I do not believe that is the right thing to do. These are people like anybody else. Now, from religious perspectives, well, again, these are matters of faith, not matters of fact. One of the first things we learn in school is compare and contrast. This is an apple, this is an orange. They compare and that they are the same size. They contrast because they are different colors. So you want to bring religion, politics, and science all into the same conversation. There is fact and there is error, or I guess more correctly or more fairly, there is fact and there is assumption. So when it comes to religion, there are matters of faith, matters of fact. When it comes to politics, there are presumptions and there are still matters of fact. Education is for matters of fact. And like I said, anything can be made political if you just change the conversation. All you have to do is change the context, and now you're talking politics and government instead. Now,
Being
my
gay
issue.
is not political.
Well, you can make it political. Religion shouldn't be political either, but you can put it in politics.
Right.
Anything can be put in politics if you want it to be there. So
Right,
you
but
can
being
make it.
straight's not political. It's not like, they must be a Republican. He's straight.
Right.
Like,
Well,
it shouldn't be that way, but people have made it that way so often and demonized. Like, we've lost at least online, lost the meaning of woke, lost the meaning of groomer, lost the meaning of all of these words. And
as far as I could tell, they didn't mean anything anyway. Like I said, they're imaginary
fuck
words.
yes, they did.
Well,
Grooming?
groomer. No, excuse me, groomer. Because you gave me a solid definition yesterday, so that was the first time I actually got a firm grasp of groomer. But other words like woke, like I said, they're wokey, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. That it's an imaginary word for people that live to solve imaginary problems. As far as I can tell, they just people don't exist. They have. I say they don't exist because they don't seem to have a real identity.
Wait. Hold
That's
on.
why they strike me as imaginary people.
Hold on. I have never called you a Nazi. Never called you a Nazi.
No.
Never. I don't use the word Nazi.
Right.
That's not even in, and I'm not a lefty. I would never call you that. I would never call anybody that's here that. I think there can be room for discourse. I would never say that. That's
They're actually
fucking asinine. It makes it lose the meaning.
Racist people, you can have that.
You're a robot.
What? I screwed up. Me again?
Okay, Elon, I was just making sure. I would never. That's not in my repertoire. Like that. It's just not something I say normal.
Oh, you were talking to Elon.
Yeah, it's not. That doesn't even sound like me.
Oh, okay, no. Anyway, all right. So let's get back to the conversation.
You're a robot.
We did a lot of dissecting, trying to figure out what we're going to talk about.
You're a robot. 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 Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Like I said, my phone is down, so I don't hear you right away. Let me play with the settings.
Play with the settings. If it doesn't work, we'll make it through.
Change anything?
Actually, yeah.
Holy shit! Even you got louder. Cool. I should have done that to begin with. All right. So back at it. So remember, everybody in the audience, we're talking about political activism in education and how it's my position that it's interfering. So, like I said, anything is political if you want it to be political. So, what's he saying? Left calls people Nazis. The right calls people groomers. Both sides are wrong in making a point. Well, and here's the thing.
Not a good one.
Let's dissect I'll dissect what I got out of that. So it is true. People are throwing words around.
but at the same time, I don't. It seems like they're throwing shit until something sticks, and I think what Elon's actually trying to say is sometimes, yeah, they actually do stick. Sometimes actually somebody actually is using these words in the right way at the right time, even if they're not meaning to. Because let's face
They
facts.
can't
Yes, they're
hear you.
me.
Yep, your phone's too quiet now.
Oh, hold on. Button.
I turned you up all the way. Hopefully that helps.
Any better?
No, no. I mean, I can hear you okay,
Oh shit.
but now I got an echo.
Oh, because I.
Does that sound any better?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Yeah, some cancellation on and off, and that fights the problem. Even though I want to see what Dead Guy had in mind with my voice, because he
Yeah.
said that robot sound was really cool. I had to listen to the replay to really grasp what was going on that day. Okay. Anyway, so guys in the chat, understand what we're saying. We're talking about politics interfering with public education because it can happen. But as we're talking about here, politics and social conversation in general, the difference is the context of the conversation. But when it comes to politics in school, politics when I was in school were discussed, but there was no not so much discussed or taught. They were mentioned, but we were also taught not to emphasize it because these are matters that do sometimes divide people. You
Right.
here in
But did you have
education are
civics?
here. What's up?
Did you have civics and stuff like that where you talked
Yeah.
politics? Okay.
Oh no. I mean, even before that, even though it was just elementary school, we didn't really have that. Whether it was history class or yeah, well, the history class really, or social studies, what they were calling it at the time. These conversations did come up, but the teacher always made it clear we don't talk about this stuff in school because a lot of it can make people dislike each other. You here in education, you're not, that's not what you're here for. You're just here to learn so you can make yourselves better people when it comes time to be adults. And
Absolutely.
that's what we were. That's really how, as far as the conversation went. The no one should be. It's hard to imagine people are unaware of the divisive nature of politics these days. So when you're talking about politics in school, there are people who say it's harmless because politics have always been there, except that political intolerance is much more pronounced than has ever been, and that does not
Right.
belong in schools.
Right.
So regardless of political ideology, if you're taking that into a public school, you're teaching that to kids, you're teaching intolerance to kids. And now it's a step backwards. Like I said, I was taught in school the white man used to be out to get me. I wasn't taught that the white man is still out to get me. We had conversations around slavery and such, and it didn't involve telling me like you have some teachers today telling there was that issue in New York where I think it was an elementary school teacher. She gave students a homework assignment. The white students, they were just want to know what they were told. Their parents, if they were white, had to play a role of like either a white or just a white person of the past that wronged a minority, and the white parents were told to apologize just to play that role.
What?
Like that is something that does not belong in school today.
I
I wasn't
agree.
taught to get
I
that.
agree.
But and that's not even remotely close to anything I was taught in school. I mean, yeah, we taught all this stuff, but not that. But we were taught also how America has attempted to advance
Right.
compared to then. We were taught a lot about how now we understand. Like back then, it was mainly white and black. There were you grow up a little bit, you find out like some areas we know about the Native Americans. Of course, they have their own communities. There were some areas in what is now San Francisco that were actually founded by Chinese before white settlers ever came to the mainland U.S. So yeah, they talked about those divides past, but they talked about how spending time together made everybody grow together, and the conversation, if political at all, was around equality, was not at all around divides, or not at all about this grudge against the white man. This is just this is a huge step backwards. So that was my objection talking about politics in school. It's not the conversation around political theory. It's not even the conversation around political positions. It's the political intolerance for any disagreement.
Well,
That
and
whole
then
thing.
you have an overcorrection in places like Florida or Illinois where they
Mhm.
don't want to teach Black history at all. And that is wrong. We should
It
be
depends what they're calling Black histories. Like I said, we opened this conversation with the 1619 Project. Again, a lot of things
Did you ever
called.
learn about the Tulsa riots in school?
Yes,
I did not.
I did, and
I did not know about that. This is ridiculous to even say, but until the Watchmen show.
yeah, I remember you mentioned that. Yeah, that was a good show, by the way. But so in those riots, yes, we did learn about that. But what we didn't learn in school is that first off, the context of the times was clear. There were constant tensions between white and black. But what doesn't often get told in schools, as far as I know, is that the events that triggered those riots, it was a sexual assault from a black man onto a white woman. I don't know the names of the people immediately involved, but for some reason that gets left out. Now, so some people, Black history means leaving that part out.
Oh well, see, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like that either.
But there is and it may have been Texas. It's always like Texas or Florida. Come on now.
Yeah,
That wanted to leave out huge historical figures. Like absolutely wanted to have them off the curriculum.
hmm
And you can't do that. You can't not teach Black history when it is ingrained in American history. And it
right.
was an alleged assault. That's what
And like I said, when you're talking Black history, you do have to be careful because, well, anytime you're talking about a specific, or you're talking about skin color or a specific cultural based on skin color and such, and you're talking about history, context does matter. There's context that gets implemented, and sometimes there's a grudge against the world being implemented. Okay, like I said, like Black history. So let's look back at a few years ago, all the statues of big name historical figures that owned slaves. A lot of
right.
people were calling for those statues to be pulled down. But then you have people like Spike Lee, who in 1998 in an interview in Esquire outright said that black and white people should not marry and should not have kids together. But he gets to keep his star in Hollywood. That's not fair. Now, granted, enslavement and opinions on marriage are two dramatically different worlds. But if the conversation is around ending racism and another part of the conversation is telling us that we should not honor racist people in history, then Spike Lee should be losing his star in Hollywood. But dare you bring that up? And for some reason, it's World War fucking III.
Wow, that's a really fucked up thing to say.
Right, and again, people missed it. Esquire, 1998. I don't remember exactly what month, but that's when Spike Lee said it. And Spike
What
Lee
year?
is
Wait, what year?
1998.
I'm not going to cancel somebody for something or cancel somebody's star for something that's 25 years old. Does he, as you
But
walk
he
back
hasn't
those
changed.
statements? Okay.
It's not. No, Spike
I
Lee
mean,
doesn't come off. Here's also something that people might miss because Spike Lee's racism is really pronounced. All of the
I didn't
protagonists,
know that.
the brilliant parts of history are parts that shape
No.
me.
I
Oh,
mean, I didn't know that Spike Lee was like that at all.
yeah, that's Spike Lee. In fact, in his movies, typically, the protagonists are darker blacks, and the antagonists are lighter blacks. So his grudge against whiter skin has been captured in his movies, even. And then finally,
I
he
had
outright
no
says black and
clue.
white shouldn't marry.
Yeah, that's not
So here's what it comes down to: history class. And that was one of the things in the video that opened this conversation. That was one of the things that stood out to me. When he's talking about history, he's talking about teaching him the facts of history. That's where it becomes a debatable statement, because history, there's something wrong with people. They think history is supposed to be one singular explanation. The history has always been a collection, a collection of different stories with a sum total effect. Like World War II is one of my best examples. And okay, let's not. There's no mystery that Japan had a grudge against the U.S.
Right.
Now, our history books do tell us about the attack on Pearl Harbor. My history books didn't tell us that the president of the era had he had an arms deal with Japan at the time, but America wanted something to do with Japan's efforts to occupy China. Japan wouldn't fill it in, and like Elon says right there, history written
Yep.
by the winners. But there are actually, I think a better way to say that is that our history books are definitely framed by the winners. But
Mhm.
history in general, bits and pieces of it are everywhere. You just gotta know where to look. And case in
Right.
point, right here, World War II. So that's what we were told, that Japan attacked us. That's a fact, and we were told that the nation generally supported World War II, and they really didn't. The people had left diaries all over. A lot of these things started to come out after America had occupied Japan for a while after World War II, because people got to actually say what they really felt. And Japan was under an intense religious rule at that time, and a big part of that was national identity. There was no room for disagreement. Any dissent was it was a punishable crime. So we didn't get to actually hear the entirety of it. A lot of people for a while didn't get to hear the entirety of it.
Right.
Now it comes out to these days that journal entries, because that's how people kept their thoughts. They organized their thoughts by writing them down, and they left that lying around. So we know the truth today. And there have always been multiple stories. A similar example in Mesoamerica. There are questions about whether or not Mesoamerica was even a peaceful era. And truth be told, it's a mixed history. Like the first historical writings uncovered from the Aztecs show that they were farmers that, just like watching the stars, they implied a peaceful people. Then the things about human sacrifice later on would eventually come out. So that does cast doubt on what was going on at the time.
Right.
But still, there are multiple stories going. That's the truth. There are multiple stories going on. This idea, like, again, when it comes to Maya culture, when you're talking about Aztecs, Olmecs, and so on, you're this question: was it a peaceful era? And I'm thinking, why is that the question even to ask? There are obviously multiple stories going on. Hell, there are people to this day not only have never seen a white man in their life, they're in Mexico right now. They don't even speak Spanish. They speak a native language that's really hard as fuck to use. I tried before and it sucks. But they speak their own language. They don't even see the other native born Mexicans today. Like, these are people that have lived way the hell out. They don't have cell phones. There's no concept of satellites.
That is
They live by
insane.
fire.
I would
What's that?
die. I would die.
but just goes to show you that there have always been people apart from mainstream history. The mainstream, what's really going on in schools right now, finally, my point is that mainstream history, there's a race to dictate what mainstream history is supposed to say. So regardless of who's doing that, they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Mainstream
Absolutely.
history, because mainstream history, again, it's, for some reason, it's about a contrived singular narrative, but that's not real history. There have always been multiple stories. So if you're going to teach history right, depends what you're trying to say. You have to teach multiple stories. So what is your opinion of good
That's a good
old
question
genocide
for you.
Columbus?
If you want to
He's a
teach
scum.
real history.
He was a scumbag. I knew about
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
Latinos know that story.
I
Like
was
when
taught that he was this joyous, there was this amazing Thanksgiving and he was great. And I'm not kidding. I didn't know until I was out of school. And I believe either in college or relatively um in my early 20s. That is not taught in school. These things are not like, maybe they are now. I don't know, just because I'm old as fuck. But that it's not real. The history they teach is so for
I'll
lack
say
of
it's
a better
limited.
term, whitewashed. Limited is fine
Limited
too.
is more fair. As limited is more fair because, yeah, public schools were taught Columbus founded America. He really didn't. That's where the name India comes from. They Yeah, that happened too.
Yeah.
The That's where the name Indian comes from because remember Columbus wanted to go around the world. He didn't know about the US yet. He was looking for he wanted to prove to his ignorant Christian hierarchies that that the earth was actually round. Remember, Columbus was given money and they basically thought he was going to drive off the edge of the earth and die. Because contrary to popular
Right.
belief, it was well known the earth was round.
Yeah.
That was found out by a Greek mathematician 3,000
Yep.
years ago, at least. But here's what happened. He had colleagues that were in Egypt, and they came back and talked about what they saw during the summer solstice. During the summer solstice in Egypt, all the shadows were gone around noon. But at the same time back in Greece, all the shadows were pointing to the north. So this guy did some math, and he found out the Earth within like 94% accuracy, something that we would do with satellites today, but he did that just based on the fact that that shadows were behaving differently in different parts of the year.
Right.
And he got it down to like 94% accuracy. So people have known for a while that the earth is round. It's just that and I think this also comes down to political and religious sensitivity. They didn't want to tell you that the general ignorance imposed by religious government, they didn't want to emphasize that. So in school, they just told us people thought the earth was flat. They tell you that religious government said you will call the earth flat or
Right.
you will be imprisoned. Okay, well, those are things, yeah, we had to learn later. But yeah, by and large, people did already know the earth was round. So Columbus was just trying to prove that he could go around the earth to India. He already knew the math.
Right.
I forget if he found out himself or if he looked to references from other mathematicians, but he already knew. But at his time, math was illegal, basically, because math was not religion.
Right.
So, and that's also how Freemasons got started. That's another interesting history itself. But yes, when it comes to Columbus himself, I've always known that Columbus wasn't a nice guy.
But did you learn that in school? Is what I mean.
No, I didn't learn that in school.
I
Like
didn't
I
either.
said, no, that amongst like Latinos have learned Mesoamerican history through each other outside of public schools. So
And
things like that,
that's
yeah,
crazy.
things
That's
like
ridiculous.
well, I've never been a big fan of history itself. I've always been a fan of more practical subjects like math, science, or even language skills. I've always thought that should be emphasized in school rather than political subjects, especially history, because history has always been about building a national identity. And I
Well,
was never
even
for that.
so, and I get what you're saying about the math stuff. I'm totally against that, but I don't think that we should this comes back down to the demonization of teachers because honestly, like we should be praising the good, but you'll never see it. I released a video maybe a month ago of a teacher talking to his black students and saying that he believed in a white ethno state. How did
Yeah,
that person get through? But
I
nobody
want
else
to
covered
see,
it. Nobody
and,
talked about it. They talked about the teacher that said they were gay.
and I saw that video, and I would have liked to see the entirety of the conversation. And I don't think that man was fairly represented there, because
What? Stop
hold
it.
on, watch this, because it's very common for others to say everybody is a little bit racist. I don't believe that to be true, but let's go with it. A lot of people hold it true. Based on what little I saw, I thought he was trying to explain that, but the video is too short, so I don't
That
have a
was
solid
all. I
conclusion.
released the whole thing. I don't know. It could have been longer, but
Hmm.
I am not going to give somebody that says they want a white ethno state the benefit of the doubt. That is not what you should be teaching children. If
Wait,
you
I didn't hear anything about benefit of the doubt. I thought he was just explaining that deep, because you remember he even said deep down, I am white ethnocentric.
right, and he
Like,
shouldn't be teaching that to children. You just absolutely plain and simple. That should not be taught in school. You should not have to worry. Think about those kids' worries when they go into that class.
and don't get me wrong. First off, I would have liked to know what he said. I don't agree. I don't agree with that statement that everybody's a little bit racist. I think that's just a half-ass. I think that's just a way of shutting other people up, so you don't
Right.
have to. So you don't have to admit to others you're racist. Today, saying, "Well, you're just like me. You're doing what I would do." I feel like that's a way of deflecting any criticism. With that guy, I don't know. I don't know the whole of what he was saying, but I would have liked to hear it all, just to make sure I understand exactly what he was saying. Because that short TikTok video, I doubt that captured the whole thing. So I don't know what he was trying to say with that, but if he was trying to say everybody's a little bit racist and so what, absolutely, of course I don't want that in school. When it comes to Columbus, by further example, this is something people can politicize because people want to. Again, there's a lot of conversation about grudges against the white man, and that's what social justice is. And really, that's what they should be talking about in public schools. Now, excuse me, when they talk about criticizing public schools, the other terminology is too easy to misuse. Social justice is actually a concept that's fairly easy to grasp nowadays. And that's the kind of stuff they're talking about. To take Columbus by example, he came here, he was white, Catholic. Look at all the bad things he did. And this is what white Catholics did. That you can keep that very simple. There's a historical context that could be missing. So if you want to teach history, what are you teaching in that lesson? Because it is true, especially with the Spanish Inquisition, Columbus's work was honestly it's an extension of the same problem. There were religion at the time was taught with, like, it's not much different from political ideology today. There's an intolerance for disagreement. This is right, this is wrong. Those who disagree, they are admitting to guilt. They are admittedly your enemy. That is going on in politics today, just like it was going on in Catholicism back then. So if teachers today are talking about that era in history, they probably are. But if they talk about that era in history to frame white people as the problem, I don't want that teacher in school. I don't think that's the lesson. Okay, so if someone's going to tell me that, by example, that white people were the problem, well,
Right
then let
now?
me, huh?
Are you meaning right now? Because obviously they were the problem during slavery.
Well, no, that was a problem, but don't let us not be. Let me not confuse the conversation. Racial division is a huge part of history around the world, but what goes on there, because the white man came over, so that's framing. So the white man was the initial aggressor in that case, but there's room to argue that the white man is the problem because of white ideas. That's where these conversations get skewed, and that's where these conversations just become completely wrong-headed. The white idea is like what? Like free markets. That's one of those things that goes on even today in mainland U.S. Talking about free market decisions, or any freedom in the free market contributes to the problem. There's one book I can think of. It's about neoliberalism and impacts on different racial communities. It's called Disciplining the Poor. So it was about that history of neoliberal economic policy, which basically means government regulation should not be used unless it is making free markets perform better. So it was all about the economic impacts on different races at the time. Um, no, so the blame goes to the white idea of free markets. Now, take that bullshit to Mexico, where farmers have been freely trading for centuries. They'll
Right.
laugh at you, and that's assuming and if they've never seen a white woman before, they say, "Holy shit, a white woman!" And believe it or not, that does happen out there. Like I said, there are some places that have never even seen have
That's
not even seen white people
insane to
yet.
me.
Right. So, but that's the conversation, that white ideas are harmful. And I want to know what makes them white. White people are supposed to be, white people are being framed as a problem. Or if not the white people, not the white skin, then the white ideas, whatever the hell that means. So, like I said, free market supposedly a wide idea. What, brown as fuck farmers were trading way before the white man ever showed up. And then they talk about constitutional ideas like the right to speak without punishment. What about it? I grew up with that idea as well. I didn't think it
Right.
had anything to do with white people. I honestly didn't even find out until I think I was almost 20 years old. I found out my grandmother was actually white. So at first glance, because remember my family, I have like a Mexican relative, but she was actually Spanish born in Mexico. She was white too. So
Wow.
my family is almost by and large from Puerto Rico. I have a few Mexican relatives, but in Puerto Rico today, white people exist there and they're practicing Catholicism. And it's actually, well, crime in Puerto Rico really went up for different reasons. They had their own problem with drugs and such. But you're going to tell someone like me that white people are the problem because of the Columbus era, and that's supposed to be
No, I
square
don't think
one.
anyone wants to say they're the problem. I think they just want to be taught what actually happened.
But are they talking about what actually happened? Because there's room to tell kids something else, like all this other stuff we're talking about. The blaming white people or white ideas, which I don't know how they're separating to, because that's also part of the problem. Because white idea gets lumped in with white people. Like me as an atheist, by example. If so, I have criticisms for Judaism as well as Christianity. Depending on which Jewish person I talk to, they might call me anti-Semitic because I talk down the religion. But to some
Right.
of them, the religion is necessarily attached to the person.
Right.
So like I can't win. I just get presumed to be. I just get presumed to be intolerant, and that's not the truth.
Wait,
But
so what you're
you can't
saying
win.
is
Because of that.
you're a Kanye West fan.
Wait, what?
No, I'm just fucking with you. You heard it here first.
Oh.
Joseph loves Kanye West.
Yeah, I just saw that guy in West Hollywood. He offered me $2 to clean my windshield. I said no.
Oh my gosh. All right, we are going to wrap up, but this was super fun. If you guys learned anything today, learn that, you know what? Josephine Baker.
I need what?
Josephine Baker. She was never taught in school, but I love her. She was the lady that made the flapper ideas, and it was given credit to a white woman. So we're going to go with that. That's what you guys learned today. She made my favorite style in history. Come on now. Flappers were awesome.
Are you sure? Do any of us know what that is? Let's
You
give
don't
the
know what
chat
a
a few minutes
flapper
actually.
is? Come on,
The
guys. Do you know
clapper?
what a flapper, Flapper? Flapper girls?
That sounds suggestive.
I mean, it kind of does. From the 1920s? Come on, somebody's got to know. Elon, figure drawing. James. They're just like, I don't know what a flapper is. And maybe it's the girl in me. No, I don't know what a flapper is. It's the girl in me then. It definitely is. It's history and fashion. That's how I knew she is.
Like I'm over here thinking mud flaps, dude. Are you sure we know what you're talking about? Is there another word for it?
Hey, Black Phoenix is the BAMF of the day. He knows who Josephine Baker is. And he knows what flappers are. Yes, okay, everybody Google it
He didn't say
later.
anything about flappers. Hold on, you're misrepresenting history, man.
Oh, no, I'm not. Look. I know what flappers are.
Okay, well, he still hasn't explained them either. So we're in the chat full of people that don't know what the hell's going on.
Look it up. I love fashion. I love anything girly, and Josephine Baker was wonderful.
Yeah. I still don't know who that is. How important could it be?
It is. It's super important if you're a girl.
Okay, there. Look. Figure drawing went to the internet to figure this out for us. Subculture of young Western women in the 1920s. Ooh, jazz. I like jazz. I love jazz.
They were the original rebels from the 1920s.
Oh.
I love flappers. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up, though. I think I'm going to make this a weekly thing. Do Thunderdomes, invite people on. I think it's freaking awesome. I really enjoy,
I've been saying for a while you should be doing this.
And it's not really debate. It's a conversation, right? It's...
Right, I'm fine with that. Like, last time everyone was talking about winners and losers. I wasn't trying to win, but also you people weren't listening to anything I said. Like, I had to reiterate multiple times in 2 hours, and it still didn't work. I don't know what the hell I tried for.
All right, guys. But yes, thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate you. And
Thank you
we
for
will
letting
see
me
you
on.
guys. Oh, no problem. Anytime. We will see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.